Morning everyone, thanks for joining us on a Monday morning. You're at the Your Life, Your Way session. You'll hear today from Lee Thompson, who's the Head of Adult Services, and Yvonne Rhodes, the Head of Business Management and Commissioning. We're going to show you a slide deck presentation, and Lee and Yvonne will be going through all the work that they're up to so far with the teams that they've got underneath them. If you've got any questions throughout the session, please feel free to add those. There's a question and answer section. If you look at your little banner, that comes up when you hover your mouse over the screen, you'll see two little boxes crossing over each other. There's a little question mark in that, and that's to bring up your chat room. So on the right hand side, feel free to add your questions. There's an anonymous button as well if you want to do that anonymously and ask anything you like. You can ask questions while the presentation's taking place, or you can ask them afterwards. Once the presentation's finished, we'll go over to you guys on the floor and answer some of your questions. We'll put those across to Lee and Yvonne. So I'll pass you over now to Lee Thompson, who's going to start you off on his update, and then we'll go over to Yvonne after that. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining this Your Life, Your Way roadshow. It's a real good opportunity this morning just to bring everybody up to date with what we've been doing and where we're at. And I think it's fair to say that over many months we've been planning the flight path for the change programme. And now we are significantly airborne, and it's a good opportunity to get everybody on board and let you know the route that we're taking in our flight, really. So just using a little bit of an analogy this morning on Monday morning. But as many of you will know, we've been working with Empower for some time now, but we have entered a formal delivery partnership with them, so we will be working closely with them. We are working closely with them now for the next 12 months because that delivery partnership commenced at the beginning of June this year. And it followed an initial diagnostic of the work that we do within adult social care within East Riding Council, and that was many months ago now, but that determined that 79% of our budget is allocated to long-term care arrangements for people. So the outcomes for people are usually in our current system that they either have a residential or nursing placement or a significant and substantial package of care. It also highlighted to us that there's less investment on prevention, and so there is a need to think about the long-term sustainability of our adult social care offer. And as the funding position continues to be unresolved nationally, a lot of our funding is supported by short-term grants. The spending review for adult social care has been delayed because of some of the challenges within central government. So there is a real need to really think around what we can do at a local level to manage demand and the demographic pressures that are forcing us to think a little bit differently. I think the Care Act as well focuses on well-being and prevention and strength-based approaches, and it offers us those new permissions to focus on preventing, reducing and delaying the need for statutory services. The Your Life, Your Way programme is also an opportunity to think about prevention, the community offer, asset-based community development, and therefore the programme has a strong interface with our public health colleagues and with our culture and leisure colleagues as well. We also want to have stronger relationships with the voluntary sector, using voluntary sector organisations, commissioning at a lower level, and also looking at the role of volunteers across the community and different initiatives. The programme is about maximising independence through different conversations with people, agreeing outcomes and aspirations that people wish to achieve in their lives, promoting their well-being and improving their quality of life. And where possible, it is about working with people in that preventative space or through a re-ablement offer that maximises skills and confidence, and keeping people at home in their communities for as long as is possible. And to do this, we need to think differently. We need to understand what our current offer has been, what our offer in the past has been, and we need to come together and do some significant redesign. And what we're going to talk about as we move forward this morning is what that redesign is looking like and what it encompasses. So I'm now going to hand over to Yvonne, who is going to also say a few words of introduction. Many thanks.
Morning, everybody. I suppose for me, this whole change programme's taken on, as you would expect, a whole new different perspective with COVID-19. So for those of you who came to or have heard about the previous work we've done around this programme at Bishop Burton College and Beverley Racecourse, you'll have heard me talking about commissioning and how important I feel that is and how strongly I feel that we get that right. And I don't think anybody could have anticipated, back when we were talking at Bishop Burton or at Beverley Racecourse, the impact that COVID-19's had on that whole landscape for commissioning. And it's been massive. Much of the last sort of 3-4 months has been spent by business management and commissioning trying to deal with the impacts of the pandemic. And that's had some significant implications for our providers across the market, both in domiciliary care and in residential care. We don't have daycare at the moment because daycare has been closed, and that's had significant impacts on people who would normally have used daytime opportunities. So the impact for carers, the impact for people who work in care and those people who are making a living from the care industry have been changed beyond anything I would have recognised, pre-COVID. And in many ways that's presented us with an even more exciting opportunity to look at the future and change. So we've got significant reductions in the number of people who've gone into residential care over this period. We've got vacancy levels in residential care, the like of which we've not experienced before. Some of you may recall that in Beverley a few years ago, occupancy levels in residential care were pushing 100% every day. At the moment, they're pushing towards 40%. So that's significant, and it's a real challenge for that part of the market, but it brings with it real opportunities for us. So it's a real time for focusing on what do we want to do differently and how do we want to make things sustainable for the future, but how do we want to shape them so that they deliver the things that Lee was just talking about, and how's that focus on people while they're still at home, while they're still fit and able. And one of the most sort of exciting and positive things that's come out of COVID-19 is the way that communities have worked together. Some of that's been generated by our involvement and our impetus as a council, but some of that has been a natural progression for local charities, for local parish councils and ward councils who have really got on board with the idea that they've got vulnerable people in their communities who need support. And one of the things that we need to try and do is harness that, because those vulnerable people were there before COVID-19 and they're going to be there after COVID-19's gone. And it's about how do we shape and think differently about how as citizens we support our local population of people who might need just a little something each day or each week to keep them safe and well and away from needing a care package or residential care. And families have clearly been very, very successful at managing to think about different and alternative ways of delivering care through the pandemic, because we have seen massive reductions in referrals, and at some points it's been up to 50% reductions. So, one of the things that this programme is doing, and we'll talk a little bit about it in the presentation, is thinking about, well, what does that look like now? How does it compare to what the situation was pre-COVID, and what will that look like, or what's our best guess about what it'll look like going forward? So that's really, for me, the one of the big parts of this programme is to get that right, to make sure that the information we gather is accurate and that we interpret that correctly. And that's a big part of where I see, you know, people who are listening to this presentation having some input and some ability to help shift and change and shape what it is we need to do. So I'm not going to go on any more than that, really. I'm going to pass back to our technical assistant in the background, who I'm very envious of, because she clearly has got better skills than me, to take us into the slide deck. I always marvel at people who can do technology, because I struggle getting the mute button off. So if you see my lips moving and I'm not talking, it's because I haven't hit the mute button. But I'll attempt to concentrate enough so when it is my turn to speak, I can. So the presentation we're going to show you is where we have been and why we've been there and why we're looking at this programme, and then moving through to talk about what is it that we're going to do next. Thanks, Emma. Do you want to take us on to the next slide? That's lovely. So the aims of today's roadshow. It's a bit of a recap, really, and we talked to you a little bit in our introductions, Lee and I, just a few minutes ago, about why we want to change and why we need to change. And that's clearly, some of it is around money and some of it is about demand. We know that demand was outstripping supply, so we know that people were waiting for care packages. We know that people sometimes went into residential care because we couldn't secure domiciliary care packages for them, and it was really important that we moved away from that situation. It's not sustainable for the future, and it's not a good way of helping people live their lives or end their lives at the time that happens for them. One of the things that we also want to do is make sure that we remind you about the operating model and help you to sort of focus on that, and so that you start to embed that in your thinking. So as you're working day to day, that operating model makes sense to you, and that the key factors that are sat within there are things that you, and I know you already do, but that you embrace as part of your everyday working. We want to introduce you to the team, so that will be the team, not just our staff that work within our respective teams, Lee's and mine, but also the Empower team, who are going to be supporting this programme, and members of Emma's change programme team. So we'll do that. We'll talk you through who they are and how you will be able to sort of interface with them. Most importantly, probably, we want to focus on what we've achieved so far, because obviously we've been working on the programme now for some time, and we have achieved quite a bit. To say we've had a pandemic in the midst is quite surprising that we've come as far as we have, really. And we want to talk about our future activities and what comes next, and how you'll be involved in that, and how you can be involved in that, or continue to be involved in it if you already are. And as Kimberly said, throughout the presentation, you'll get the opportunity to post questions on the chat, or you'll be able to ask questions or give feedback either through the presentation or at the end of it. Thanks, Emma. So why do we want to change? Well, we covered some of that in our introductions, Lee and I. I mean, there are national pressures on health and social care, which have been around and growing for some significant time. But certainly locally, we've got immense pressures, and we, we're facing winter and doing our winter preparation at the moment. And without a pandemic, winter was always a real challenge for us. So we know that we needed to do something differently to make sure that the resources that we have across the health and social care system are used to best effect, and we had to respond, and we need to respond to make sure that we don't become paralysed by that demand. We know that there is a significant demand for people wanting to live at home. We know that as a local authority, we're a net importer of older people. And if I think back to the lovely councillor Harrop, who always used to say, that's a really good news story, that the fact that people want to come and live in East Riding in their retirement, but it does also bring with it a pressure. So that does bring with it the need to plan for that number of people who may live in East Riding, who lose a partner and then may remain with no family infrastructure around them. So we know that we're going to see more people needing to live at home. We've always had a higher than average, national average number of over 85s, and we know that the over 65s are growing in number. And we also know in some areas of deprivation that those people over 65 can live with a significant levels of comorbid health conditions, so that they are frailer, younger. We know that, again, a good news story, but we are supporting people with learning difficulties and a growing number of people with mental health issues. And we also know that the number of those people who do not meet the eligibility threshold for continuing healthcare funding is also on the increase. And that brings with it a significant number of pressures, not just financial, but also around our workforce and how do we support our workforce to have the right level of skills to meet the needs of those individuals. And at the moment, the vast majority of those skilled workforce are working in residential settings and rather than supporting people in the community, and we need to shift that balance. I'm never going to apologise for talking about the money, because as anybody that's heard me speak before will know, John said to me on the first job in this, the first day in this job, you know, it's about the money. If you haven't got the money, you can't do marvellous things. But it isn't just about the financial aspect of this. It is about using our resources more effectively, and it's about resources. So it is about money, but it's also about people, and it's also about us as an organisation and the things that we've got within our gift to work with communities better. And an example of that would be the way we cut through the red tape when the pandemic started and how quickly we were able to mobilise some really essential services. And it's about how do we harness some of that so that we can have some of this large scale organisational change that we need going forward to be able to create new things quickly, test them out, and if they fail, then fail fast and move on. And that's the great skill of entrepreneurs, I'm told. Oh, I said entrepreneur right twice. We also need to think differently about how we're designing and implementing our local care offer. And again, you know, I made reference to that at the beginning of this presentation. It's really, really important that any model that we have, any care that we develop in the market is sustainable and is fit for the future. We can't go back to where we were before. We have to keep moving forward. And I do think we've got a real opportunity to do that. Thanks, Emma. So our vision, adults and carers at the heart of everything we do, and carers have always sat, you know, really close to our hearts, and most of what we do is an attempt to try and support not just people who have care needs, but their carers, and we know how valuable they are to us and how valuable a resource they are. So one of the things that we need to do is make sure that we support our residents and we support them locally, make them feel connected to where they live, and make sure that they're wherever we can and wherever it's possible, that they are connected into local groups, into local resources or local services that help them to help themselves and each other and keep them away from statutory services, whether that's social care or whether it's healthcare. And we know that where people are able to do that, their health and well-being improves. So where people have those community links and where people feel that they're part of some kind of other, whether that's a community or a group, or even if it's just a pair of people that work together to support each other, we know that improves outcomes for people. We know we need to start focusing on getting in early and making sure that we reach people before they need us. And that's not just around care, that's around a whole range of things, including housing and making sure that people have access to the right housing at the right time, and that we influence all of the aspects of the council's delivery so that we maximise people's independence, and we make sure that every time that they touch a statutory service that we're reviewing about that their opportunities to tap into all the things that might help them stay fit and well and healthy. We need to focus on our resources and interventions for people with long-term conditions, and Lee made mention of our colleagues in customer services, and we've had a really good track record of working with our leisure services, and within our directorate we've got a really good and well-established track record of doing that and working with GPs. But it's about how do we do that much more often and on a bigger scale, and how do we make sure that we focus what resources we've got on those people with the real complex needs, people with long-term conditions, people who are vulnerable, people who lack mental capacity, and people who do not have those infrastructures around them, and nor are they likely to be able to build them even with support. So we have to focus the resources that we have at that very heavy end of social care. And we have to make sure that services are efficient and affordable, and that's not just efficient and affordable for the council, that's efficient and affordable for our providers. So we need to make sure that our providers operate with good sound business models, that they are able to make a profit, because they need to make a profit to stay in the market, but they use that to deliver really good care, and that we shape that so that the care that they do deliver is as I've lost the words that I need to say, but what we need to do is get them to work in a way that makes people independent, has a focus on reablement, and has a focus on making sure that even where people are in residential care, they continue to be active and they continue to be engaged for as long as they possibly can be in things that are important to them. So I'm going to pass you over to Lee, and Lee will take us through the next few slides.
Am I live, Kimberly? Okay, thank you. Just letting the technology catch up at that point. But just building on what Yvonne has said to set the scene, one of the things that we've had to do is think about our new operating model for the future. And some of you should be familiar with this, because this is the operating model that we designed in the first stages really of our conversations about change, just to really start a conversation. But it's really useful in terms of setting out our journey for the future. And along the top of this operating model, it says help to help yourself. So helping people to help themselves in that space of early intervention and prevention. It then moves on to help when you need it. So some people might need some short-term intervention, some reablement support to maximise their confidence and skills. At that point, they may be able to manage in the community with just a small care package or without support once that reablement package has been followed through. And then help to live your life. So we recognise that there will always be people who need the support of the local authority in terms of social services intervention. There will always be people with complexities, with long-term conditions, people who lack mental capacity and safeguarding. So this is not about not recognising that people will always need those interventions from social services. But in that first space of active people and active communities, this represents the work that we're doing with public health and with culture and leisure. And that's encouraging and empowering communities to look after themselves, to look out for each other, and through that asset-based community development that I spoke about at the beginning. But then people will come to our front door, which is currently the single intake and duty team. And what we want for the future is a really robust front door that is embedded in strength-based approaches. So we will be training all our staff to have conversations that are strength-based, so that they can signpost effectively and advise people, but also identify those people who do need some type of support and intervention from the local authority, who may need to come through the front door into other services. But that front door is going to be our advice and independence hub. and we've started several workshops on that, and I'll talk about that in a short while. In terms of intermediate tier and supporting independence, that will be our short-term offer, and that's all about investment into reablement and short-term care, technology, helping people to live at home for longer with the right support that they may need. And then the community wellbeing teams and specialist services being our local offer in terms of social work intervention, supporting people with long-term conditions and safeguarding vulnerable people too. So just along the bottom, it talks about promoting independence, reduce, prevent and delay the need for services, and then safeguarding, and I would say commissioning, runs along the whole of this operating model, in terms of commissioning being really important in relation to commissioning the right services for people and population to be able to deliver our Your Life, Your Way programme. So if we just move on to the next slide. So the next slide is about our customer journey, and it will change slightly, and this just builds on what Yvonne and myself have said so far. So a really strong community offer with public health, online information, accessed throughout the pathway, and you'll notice that the red line of the community offer goes right round our customer journey. It's almost like a London Underground tube line. But what it means is that the pathway and the customer journey is fairly fluid. So people can access that community offer at any point in their journey. And even people who might be looked after at home with long-term conditions might benefit from a more sort of modern offer by accessing their local community rather than just sticking with the traditional care offer of 3 visits a day or 4 visits a day. So it's really maximising that community offer. People would come in through the front door, have those strength-based conversations, would have lots of knowledge and tools at the front door for supporting those conversations and advising and signposting people appropriately. And that statutory responsibility that we've got to give people the appropriate information and advice. And you'll recognise that technology is a significant part of our new developing offer, with online information, promoting self-service and promoting the use of technology to support people to maintain their quality of life. The short-term offer in the red as you move along the customer journey is really significant in terms of when I mentioned at the beginning about 79% of our budget being spent on long-term care, either residential care or domiciliary care. What that told us also is that some people may have travelled into that space prematurely, or there could have been things done at a preventative level to prevent that. So through maximising and investing in a short-term offer that is underpinned by reablement and rehabilitation, we want to be able to capture in the future all those people who can have their independence maximised and their quality of life improved, and support them to remain within their community. So that's about that MDT approach. It's about occupational therapy. It's about people having the right equipment. It's that interface with leisure and customer services, technology, supporting our carers, because we know that carers are so crucial in terms of supporting people to live at home. We know we've got lots of informal carers who are registered with our carers support service, but we also know that the East Riding is predicted to have about 37,000 hidden carers. So potentially carers that will come through, we'll be able to identify them, or they'll just come through naturally in the future and seek support at the right time. But we want to be able to offer that support to carers to enable them to remain resilient and to continue doing the great work that they do. into assessment. So you might go from short-term offer because you might need a longer-term assessment. So that short-term offer having a really strong and robust interface with the assessment teams, the community wellbeing teams and specialist teams. But again, perhaps in assessment, starting to think about people who need that longer term intervention as well, and that bit about recognising that some people will always need long-term care through residential care, daycare or home care. And then that statutory responsibility that we have for review in terms of reviewing the effectiveness of the short-term offer and reviewing the longer-term assessment outcomes for people. And then we talk about insight and intelligence in terms of using data effectively. And that's one of the things that Yvonne and I are really keen about as we move forward, because we don't want to do things just on our intuition and what we think is right. We want to use our business intelligence. We want to be intelligence led. We want to do the right things for people, population and place, and that is about commissioning the right services to meet the needs of our population. And it's about thinking about commissioning for the future in the next 5 years, next 10 years, and understanding the different client cohort groups and what their needs might be. So one of the other things that's really, really important to this programme is the concept of co-production and involving service users in the design. And I know that Emma Garland, along with key strategic leads, are starting to think about how we can involve service users. And it might be that as we move into the real change of this programme, that we need to formally consult with some of our service users and carers to get their views and understanding. So if we can just move on. So we talk about the opportunity to change, and change can be really exciting, but equally it can be daunting. But we think that we've got an exciting and fantastic opportunity here to really do something different, and to think about the future and the way that we work. Recognising that it can cause different emotions in people and it can push people out of their comfort zone. It can feel clunky and it can feel really messy, and it can, people can feel resistant to it because, as human beings, we often feel comfortable with what we know. So I think it's really important to recognise the emotional impact of change as we move through it, and to look out for each other, particularly across teams and as colleagues. Because sometimes we can recognise, we know each other well, and we can recognise when somebody might be struggling or showing resistance to something. But the adult social care operating model, it's fair to say that something so significant and so large will need that collective effort. So what we want to do is try and create the conditions for everyone to grasp the opportunity, really. And we recognise none of us are experts. We're trying to design a significant system which is being built, redesign a significant system which has been built over decades, and is enshrined in different statute and legislation. And so to be able to do that, we need to unpick it. We need to have some strategic conversations around how it might look different for the future. It takes time, it takes practice, and we will make mistakes along the way. And one of the things that I want to say is that, the purpose of our communication plan with all of you, our workforce and our employees, is that you are our biggest asset, and you are also our experts, because you understand what's happening at the front line, and you can use those insights and intelligence to inform this programme in many ways. And I know Emma's been launching the idea of change champions, but as we move forward, there'll be an opportunity for practitioners and frontline carers, people who deliver care to individuals, to start to get involved in the conversation and inform the way forward as we travel to that new normal. And I think one of the things that I'm finding myself saying at the moment, It's the 10th of August 2020. What might it look like on the 10th of August 2021? And what conversation might we be having to hopefully celebrate how far we've travelled? One of the other things that I also wanted to say to do such significant change like we are doing, and to get through that period of, you know, where I've described it feeling clunky and challenging, we need to identify where we will build capacity, because in some of the test periods, in some of the pilots that we'll be doing, we will need to build capacity either through taking people from other services and backfilling, agreeing additional budget to bring in some extra capacity, because the biggest challenge is maintaining business as usual whilst we also get the opportunity to do the redesign. So I just want people to be aware that part of it feeling like we're on a journey and it feels a bit clunky and challenging, part of that will be reorganising our resources in a way that we can meet the requirements of business as usual, but also expand capacity into the change programme so that we can do the change and come out at the other side. So we think we have the right ingredients to deliver. In fact, I'm pretty confident about that. I've known since I came to the East Riding 2 years ago that there is a real appetite across the workforce for this change to happen. We want to harness our staff and our partners, use that energy and ideas to make things happen in a really meaningful way. So, you know, everyone has a voice in this and the opportunity to contribute, whether it'll be through a method of our communication plan or being in the design room round the table, making it happen, so that we can drive those best outcomes for residents, right back to the vision that Yvonne talked about, give people the right support at the right time and help to reduce the growing financial pressures within adult social care. And, you know, ultimately, this programme is a targeted demand change programme, because we know that our demand has increased significantly and it is time to do things differently. So I think I'm handing back to Yvonne now.
You are. So this is the journey so far. So some of you will have been with us back in June 2019 when we did the initial Empower diagnostic, and you can see the timeline there. The red around COVID-19 and the response and the pause that we had there, and that's been a significant point in time really, in terms of not just having to pause because we were responding to the emergency, but also, as I said earlier, it's that bit about what's new and what's happened as a result and in response to COVID-19 that will help us to embed some of the things that we need to embed in this programme. And you know, you can see some of them down there under the April to June timeline, those community hubs that were set up to support people through the pandemic. That, you know, that's an absolute gift. And how do we manage to maintain that? Some of the discharge to assess stuff was a wicked issue. We'd been struggling with that for years, and then, you know, COVID-19 hits us, and all of a sudden the red tape and the you know, the organisational sort of hierarchies and governance moved and shifted to allow us to do that very, very quickly. So one of the things that we have to do is make sure that what we've achieved during COVID stays with us, and we take that forward into the programme. And that brings us to the here and now, and where were we in July and where are we now? And there's been a lot of work done over the last 4 weeks really to try and get to a position, as Lee said, of getting this programme up and running and back on track and heading in the direction we need it to run. And this communication session this morning is part and parcel of that, so we can share with you exactly what has happened. We didn't stop doing everything during COVID. Some things carried on. Emma joined us, and she's been working really hard behind the scenes to make sure that we get things in line, so that when we do start to move, we're moving quickly, and that's what I've certainly started to experience over recent weeks. Do you want to move us on to the next slide? So some of you will have seen this before, and these are the work streams that we have sat underneath the change programme. and they're all fairly self-explanatory. It's a huge programme. It looks very simple when it's set out like that. It really isn't. And one of the things that we are learning every day really is the number of codependencies that there are between these various work streams. But we have now got a populated programme with people there, with leads, and we've just got a project manager for the commissioning work stream that we need to recruit, and then we have a fully signed up and populated group of people supporting us. Do you want to just move us on, Emma? Thank you. And that I don't know whether my mugshot's on there. Oh, thankfully it's not. That's a blessing, because don't you just love these things where somebody's elongated your face beyond recognition, as I can see they've done to Scott Rayner on there. But this is the key group of people who are responsible for delivering this change, and the people who are employed by us, and some of those faces will be very familiar to you, and if the faces aren't, the names may well be. And then at the bottom of this diagram, we've got the people from Empower who are aligned to each area of the work programme. And they're obviously additional resource that are helping us shape and progress the whole project. Programme, it's not a project. Do you want to move us on, Emma? So in terms of programme governance, we have got a really robust structure in terms of how this all links together and how it feeds into not just our own organisational structures and governance, but into the NHS as well. So we have a change programme board which John Skidmore chairs, and that includes heads of service, HR, finance reps, and then we have our workstream leads meetings. It's a very, very disciplined programme. I think that's probably something that you know has been one of the challenges for people working within this structure is how organised it is, because it's some of that is difficult when you've been used to working in a way that isn't that well defined. But people are managing that really effectively. And then obviously we feed into our directorate management team, which is the team meeting that John chairs with us, and our various other team meetings, both in my structure and in Lee's. Thanks, Emma. I'll hand you back to Lee.
Thank you, Yvonne. So just moving us on a little bit then, in terms of Yvonne talked about our journey through COVID-19, and we did pull the programme back a little bit, but we did engage in a piece of work around what are the opportunities, and you'll all agree that, you know, there are significant opportunities through COVID-19, particularly around the voluntary sector and the community hubs that have been established, which Yvonne mentioned, but also in particular around the discharge to assess model. And we've got some significant work happening around the redesign of discharge to assess, a full sort of system-wide group. We're looking at those opportunities, learning from what we've put in place around our response to the pandemic, how we move through the winter ahead of us and continue to learn in order to make something normal at the sort of beginning of 2021. But myself and Stuart Lindsay from Empower will be, together with Carol Wardby from City Healthcare Partnerships, we will be doing a presentation to A&E Delivery Board around discharge to assess. So, you know, if there's anybody on the call who's involved in the hospital work in any way, whether it's in terms of meeting people's needs through a care package, through reablement or through social work assessment, I think it's really important that we just let you know that we're doing some significant insights work in terms of how we can harness that discharge to assess opportunity going forward. So there were lots of insights during the sort of depth of the challenging period of COVID-19. But one of the other things that we did do was look at reforming our change programme, resetting our trajectories in terms of the money, because as Yvonne mentioned in her opening remarks, the challenge across the market is significantly different, with less demand, and the impact on the provider market therefore needs to be understood. But our demand profile in general has reduced by up to 50% across the whole of adult social care. So we need to understand that. We needed to reform the programme and reprioritise. But what you see in front of you is the sort of programme plan really for the next 6 months in terms of those work streams that were on a previous slide. And this went to change board at the beginning of June, and this reformed plan, together with the trajectories that were reset, were approved by change board. In addition to that, the opportunities that we mapped through COVID-19 were also approved as well, in terms of new ways of working, shaping the market, discharge to assess, and the community hub opportunities. So we've really capitalised on our understanding through COVID-19, strategically understanding where our opportunities are, and we've done some detailed work around what does the next 6 months and beyond look like. So I'm not going to go through each of the sort of swim lanes, because the next couple of slides give a bit more detail. Can move on. So the first work stream is around maximising independence, and the key activities within that are promoting strength-based training, giving people the tools and techniques, and Empower come with some fantastic insights through a course called Mindspace, and lots of people will have had or will be getting the opportunity to have that training, and to understand how the learning from it can be applied in practice. We've been capturing and sharing those impacts and insights which I've talked about, and we're also looking at piloting a new approach of how we undertake reviews. So we want to look at proportionate reviewing. We want to reform our reviewing team from the beginning of September, hopefully, because we did disperse it during COVID-19 to build capacity into the hospital system. But this is something now in terms of strength-based reviews, which we want to get underway as we move forward. So, so far we've been delivering those independence interventions and the training through single intake and duty, and the Alderness Community Wellbeing team have been pilots. We've started interventions with Futures Plus around strength-based approaches, and developing that new approach to reviews and how we will prioritise cases. In terms of the short-term offer and discharge to assess, we've been looking at the design and implementation of the short-term offer. We've been looking at other local authorities, so we've looked close to home in terms of Hull, and Emma Garland came from Hull, so she has a lot of insights into the effectiveness of their short-term offer. But we've also buddied up with colleagues in Cornwall, similar demographic area to the East Riding, with similar pressures and challenges, but again, understanding what their short-term offer looks like. And we've held those workshops with system partners around discharge to assess as well, which I've already spoken about. In terms of early intervention and prevention, we're looking at improved technology enabled care to offer support for independent living. So we need to think about what will our investment be in terms of technology, and what do we want it to do for people. We want to review our carers offer. We have had a strong carers offer in the past, but there is a general sense now that it needs to be stronger in terms of managing the demand and continuing to support carers to be resilient. And we want to update our online offer in terms of the services that will be online, but just in terms of how we manage public perception and how we help members of the public to understand that the space we're going to be operating in terms of promoting independence, maximising independence and improving people's quality of life. And, you know, that concept of self-care underpinned by strength-based approaches, it brings a new language, it brings a different type of conversation. So we want our website to reflect that really. So the language and culture of what we do will be changing in a way that it promotes our vision, manages public perception and expectations as we move forward. So if we can move to the next slide, please. And we've talked about our community offer. We're working very closely with public health, understanding what they've already achieved in terms of asset-based community development, local area coordination, the concept of the community hubs and how we build on the success of the community hubs during COVID-19. You know, I've been round County Hall recently, and I've witnessed some fantastic conversations that are happening with culture and leisure services and with public health around that whole sort of preventative space, really. So we've started to really think about what that model needs to look like. Public health have got the job card for active communities, but the real sort of bit that we're interested in is what will be the strong interface with adult social care in terms of that community offer and that sort of living well offer to members of the public. As I said earlier, the performance framework work stream is really important in terms of intelligence, understanding the success of the programme so far through a number of Your Life, Your Way measures. And obviously, if we use performance in the right way, it helps us to identify the challenges within the programme and then take action to address those challenges. So I can't stress how much performance is important. And we've got Simon Lowe from our corporate performance team leading all of that work with the guys who are responsible for adults performance and with colleagues from Empower. Again, redesigning our front door, so building the infrastructure for an advice and independence hub, using those strength-based models, having access to those MDT conversations. We've also got a piece of redesign work that's happening in safeguarding adults, and our ambition is to bring the decision making around safeguarding closely aligned to the front door, so that when safeguarding concerns come in, we've got some safeguarding expertise to be able to pull for. But as we move forward, training our sort of information officers, call handlers within the front door to ask the right questions around safeguarding, so we improve the quality of our referrals, and we're able to identify what referrals reach a safeguarding threshold and need intervention, people who need immediate safety, their immediate safety attending to, but also so that we can make the right decisions to workflow those safeguarding referrals to where they need to go once we've determined what's needed. So we've held a number of strategic operational workshops to develop the new model for the front door, and we are working closely with the customer services network in terms of how that will interface, and you know, tier 1 types of phone calls that probably customer services can deal with through their insights and understanding of adult social care, but where something is a tier 2 call, that it comes through to the independence and advice hub and is dealt with accordingly, and linked into that sort of whole customer journey that we described a few frames ago. And then the 7th work stream is commissioning, which again, Yvonne and I have stressed in our articulation today, the importance of commissioning as we move forward and commissioning the right types of services. We are commencing a review of direct payments in terms of our spend and resources into direct payments, but also ensuring that we've got an appropriate policy and framework for operation in terms of our direct payments offer locally. The care home market position statement is work that's been underway for a while, but again impacted through COVID-19. So there's a raft of work happening at the moment to understand the challenges across the market, but also to maintain quality across the care home market in particular and the dom care agency market, but just really thinking about what is the impact on our market and linking it into that sort of future orientated thinking around what do we need to commission as we move forward. And that commissioning work stream, it runs right along the whole of the programme, so different work streams will have a different ask of that commissioning offer, so there are lots of interdependencies. Yvonne mentioned that day centres have been a challenge during COVID-19. People have had to do something different, look at an alternative offer within their existing networks of support. So we've just launched a survey to day service users and their carers to get their insights and thoughts about the future, whether we need to do something different in terms of our day services offer, or whether in fact people would prefer something different. So that's something that we'll be understanding more about as we move forward. So there's lots of work happening across these work streams. I can say to you that it feels that we're moving at absolute pace. Every day there's something new. We're in that space of dialogue and discovery, and we're really working together. The senior management team, strategic leads and service managers are doing some fantastic work now in terms of getting underneath the intentions of these work streams and getting into that space of design. And one of the things that was important about today is, because of the times and the challenges with COVID-19, we can't do a sort of shaping the future event at Beverley Racecourse like we've done in the past. So it's just really trying to give you confidence, but also insights into the vast amounts of work that are happening. So just summarising on the next slide then, the future key activities and some of the key things that we're focusing on. Rolling out and maximising independence interventions to all teams, and that is that mind space training, that understanding of strength-based approaches. Really important that people get confident around the language, around the different type of conversation that people can have. And whilst we understand the concept of a strength-based approach, feeling that it's well embedded is really important as we move forward. Piloting new approaches and how we undertake reviews, so all that stuff around proportionate reviews that I've spoken about, and developing and testing new models at the front door and for the short-term offer, the discharge to assess work that I've spoken about. So in all of these areas, proportionate reviews, front door, short-term offer, discharge to assess, commissioning, the conversations that are happening are vast, and we're coming up with some fantastic opportunities and ideas to really move us forward in a meaningful way. And that's the bit that I said at the beginning about this now, this change programme. We know our flight path, we're airborne, and we know what we're intending to do. And I think, that it's pacey, it's demanding, and it's going to feel like that for several months throughout the year ahead, but we will come through the other side and we will start to make things normal. So that tech offer, which we've spoken about, ensuring our East Riding carers are well supported by being confident about our offer to those, and our commissioning intentions aligned with the needs of our population, really important. So we're just going to come to the end of our presentation now with a few more slides. But one of the things that is important for Yvonne and I and the team is how you will be involved as our valuable workforce. So there are lots of ways that you can get involved by, becoming a change champion, or being part of a pilot group or a test opportunity. But we will have an updated Your Life, Your Way intranet page where you can access the latest updates and documents. And I know Emma, I have to say, and I know Yvonne thinks the same, Emma Garland has been with us for 2 solid months. I think she's into a 3rd month now. And Emma has absolutely hit the ground running into this programme and has demonstrated significant leadership grip. So I'm really pleased about that, but equally I'm proud of it, because one of the things that Emma has designed is a clear communication plan with lots of different approaches to how we communicate with our workforce and with our partners. So there's lots to watch out for as we move forward. I think we've already had a couple of iterations of the Your Life, Your Way newsletter. We've got an email address where we can, receive your questions, your ideas, your challenges. You can provide feedback and raise concerns, because that fundamental question might be really crucial, and it might just change the way that we need to think about something. We've got regular programme updates within adult services and business management and commissioning meetings. So, it's on all of our partnership agendas. We just had Health and Social Care Executive meeting last week, and we provided an update to CCG colleagues. And regular updates, hopefully from your managers, through the information that's been disseminated down through one-to-one sessions, and the opportunity around your team meetings. And if there's people on the call who are feeling today, well, this is the first sort of insight that I've received to this programme, and I feel I'm a bit more on the peripheral, let us know, because we know that this reaches across so many different services and impacts on so many different services in terms of our understanding and how we will deliver things differently. And there I'm particularly thinking about, if we've got colleagues on the call who are out in the field, who are across the county in different parts of our county, who are actually delivering face-to-face care and hands-on care. Some of those services, it's really important that we hear your voice as well, and we will be looking at ways to engage with you directly through the programme. Strength-based change champions. So I know we've had a fantastic response to that in terms of people being interested. And we will be looking at a series of training sessions, and we will be making sure that our workforce have got the tools to be able to do this appropriately, that there's the right workforce development offer at the right time in terms of embedding those new ways of working. And so I wanted to just talk about making it happen, because I think, as I said at the beginning, we've done a lot of planning. I'm moving on to the next slide now, Emma, if that's okay. We've done a lot of planning, we've done a lot of understanding of our current system, but we are now in that position where we're doing the doing. And as I've said earlier, the only way that we will achieve this in terms of a successful outcome is for everybody to be on board with it. And we can't force people to be aligned with it, and we know that we have trailblazers in change, and we have people who come along a bit more gradually. But I think it's really important to ask yourself, does this sit comfortably with you? Are you aligned with the ambition for adult social care for the future in terms of achieving that large scale change through using everybody's knowledge and expertise? And if people feeling confident come to the table and contribute, and just contribute to the conversation and the chat on that day, because nobody has got all the answers. We find them together collectively, and I think it's important that we maximize the space of redesign so that we can deliver all those benefits to our residents through the expertise of everyone involved. And that does include, it does involve having a willingness to let go of the past and embrace new ways of working, and maybe having a chat with your colleague or your line manager if you're struggling a little bit with that, and just reaching out for that appropriate support. We want to create a culture where our ambitions are realised through actively addressing the issues and challenges together. And I hope that what we've set out today in today's presentation gives you some insights into how far we've come, because one of the things that was really important for me is that I didn't want people to feel that we'd set out a vision and then we'd lost momentum. And because of the way we're working at the moment, I was aware that there is a risk it could feel like that. But regardless of the challenges of the pandemic and the way we're being forced to work at the moment, there is nothing that's stopping us moving on with this programme. And, you know, again, commendable in terms of the design that's happened over the last 2 months, the commitment now that we've got with Empower in terms of that design and delivery partnership in terms of making it happen. So just, you know, a final point from myself in terms of making it happen, we bring it back to making a difference for our East Riding residents. And you know what got me out of bed this week on a Monday morning after a nice sunny weekend is, you know, always that motivation in terms of doing something good and putting something back into our communities for those people who are more vulnerable than me and you, whether that's through complex disability, through older age, through safeguarding issues. We come to work and we serve our local populations in a way that supports them to have a better quality of life. And ultimately, this programme and the intense thinking that is within it and about it aims to do that for the future, but not just for tomorrow, for the sustainable future. So looking at the next decade and beyond. So I hope that's been useful on behalf of Yvonne and I so far, and I think we're going to open up for any questions and comments. Kimberly, handing back to you.
Thanks, Lee, and thanks, Yvonne, as well for your update. I'm sure that was really helpful to everyone watching. So we're going to go across to the chat room now. We've had a few questions coming in. We've had some pre-asked questions before the event, and we've got some emails coming in as well. So please, if you've got anything to ask about anything to do with this session or anything that Yvonne or Lee have mentioned and you just want to know a little bit more about, please pop it in the chat room, and you can, like I said, you can be anonymous if you like, and we'll try and get Yvonne and Lee to answer those for you. If we don't get through them in time, they will still be answered, and the answers will be messaged to you or published on the intranet if you've done that anonymously. So there's been a few questions so far about the notes being circulated and the presentation. That will go on the intranet, a copy of the presentation and a copy of the whole recording. So you will be able to access that if needed in the future. So we'll go across to a pre-asked question. There aren't community services in all areas for us to tap into. How are you going to develop those? So I don't know who wants to answer that one, but we'll pass across to Leah or Yvonne. So we'll go to Yvonne for that one. Thank you.
You're going to have to re-ask the question, but I know it was about community services because I didn't quite understand it. So just run it past me again, Kimberly.
No problem. So there aren't community services in all areas for us to tap into. How are you going to develop those?
Yeah, okay. So I think one of the key things, and we know that in areas like the Wolds, for example, up near Stamford Bridge, sometimes around the outer areas of Holderness, etc., we really struggle with home care. So there's a number of things that we're doing. We've done a review of what has been happening over the last few weeks, and part of the work around the domiciliary elements of the direct payments review is directly aimed at giving us the right intelligence around the domiciliary care market. So at the moment we have 3 big areas of spend: residential care, home care, and then we've got direct payments. And the one thing we don't really know is, of that direct payment spend, how much of that is being spent with domiciliary care agencies and how much of that is being spent with individuals who have their own PAs that they employ themselves. Anecdotally, we think the largest proportion of that is spent on independent day services, but B, with domiciliary care agencies. and they transact with domiciliary care agencies as if they're private customers, and they're only recognised by domiciliary agencies as private customers. And one of the things that we know is over the last certainly 3 years is there've been a significant number of domiciliary care providers that have grown up in some of these small areas and the difficult to reach areas, and the small local providers that build most of their business around self-funders. And they do a very small proportion of business with us as a local authority. And one of the reasons that we need to understand the direct payments is because we need to understand whether or not a good proportion of that business actually is council business and it's been built around direct payments. And once we understand that and we understand the makeup of those businesses, we can start working with them to grow. And if they've been successful, we can also work with them to look at how do we replicate what they've done. So if we've got a particular area that we know we've got issues with, how can we take what that domiciliary care provider's done and grow it somewhere else and take that model and move it somewhere else? But before we can do that, we need to understand that market, and at the moment we don't understand it well enough. So that's why we're doing this review of direct payments, so that we absolutely get what is happening in terms of what is motivating providers to set up a new business, and then how do we motivate providers to grow. So that's one of the key things. Some of the other things that we're doing obviously are around the way we've structured our new contract. So the new contract came into place last April, and one of the things that we know is that's been really quite helpful for providers in terms of helping them grow, because it means that their ability to flex in an area is enhanced. We know that the people tied to the old contract had been tied to it for 4 years, and actually there was very little incentive for them to work out in the rural areas, because financially there was no incentive there for them to do that. The way we've contracted with them in the new contract means that there is a financial motivation for them to do that, and we are starting to see some growth in those areas. So those are a couple of the things that we've done, and we continue to do that. But as we said in that presentation, a big part of this is about being insightful and making sure that we gather the evidence that we need and then understand what it is that's happening and is what motivates providers. And I think the other thing that I would say on the back of COVID-19, and it feels like it's been my entire life, not just 3 or 4 months of it, but we've got better working relationships with our providers in the sector than we've ever had. You know, for people who you know, have worked in provider services, there's something about people being in competition that prevents people working well together. And I've experienced a massive sea shift in the way that providers are working together at the moment. And again, that's something we need to capitalise on going forward. So we build those connections. So a lot of our plans for COVID-19 were very much around people working together and mutual aid. And that was dom care providers working with other dom care providers and working with residential care. And there's a real willingness, I think, to take that forward. So again, it's about exploring some of that and then exploring some of the different ways of working going. So we tried really hard with independent support funds, ISFs, I think that's what they're called, and there's a real willingness for providers, because there is some capacity in the market. There's a real willingness with from providers to work with us around some of those new models. So some of it will be testing out that type of model and looking at, can we cluster a number of people together from, I don't know, a village or a surrounding community, and bring them together with some care hours that they share, and we bring them together as a bubble or a cluster, and then commission providers to deliver services just to that cluster of people. So those are some things that you know, I know are happening in other parts of the country and have happened very successfully, and they're some of the things that we're going to explore and are exploring. I hope
Brilliant.
that answers that question.
That's great. Yeah, thanks for that, Yvonne. Got another pre-asked question here, an anonymous one. Does the short-term offer mean that people's roles will change, or are we recruiting new staff? We'll go to Lee for that one. Thank you.
Yes, so we're just in the early stages of design of the short-term offer. We do recognise that we might have to bring new investment into it. and build capacity around staff to be able to deliver it. So we need to be really clear around what our reablement offer will look like. We will be wanting different types of expertise within that sort of MDT approach to the short-term offer. So we'll be working closely with city healthcare partnerships, social workers, care coordinators in terms of assessment, working with therapy staff. And a significant part of our redesign is what does that look like, and how will we provide that offer? So these are some of the strategic questions that we will be facing in the coming weeks, because Yvonne and I are due to receive a presentation on the work stream of the short-term offer and the workshops that have happened. So we're not in the absolute detail of what it will look like, but it is likely to change our approach slightly, and I think it's mainly about building the right capacity into the delivery of that model through different skills and expertise and different professional disciplines.
Thanks for that, Lee. I've got an anonymous question here from the live chat room for this session. It's a bit of a long one, so just bear with me. Will the plan be communicated effectively with the general public so that they too can understand the benefits of a strengths and assets-based approach? On the front line, there does remain an expectation that social services will simply provide a service to fix a problem, which is clearly not in line with our thinking. I'm going for that one. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's a really, really important question, and it's one that we're thinking through very carefully, because there's a difference between, do we do a big bang in terms of new ways of working and different perspectives and the impact that it could have on service users and carers, or actually do we through having the right conversations and doing the right thing at the right time, do we just sort of make it normal and introduce it slowly? My experience of doing this type of thing and doing this type doing this type of thing in the past is most people are up for something different, and people are happy to look at that community offer or doing something with the voluntary sector and moving away from that sort of traditional offer. And what we don't want is a lot of noise around something that is misunderstood. But at the same time, I think we have to get some clear and subtle messages out to the community. We've done a lot of work with elected members, and our elected members, the Conservative group, the opposition group, they have all been briefed at the beginning of this year, and they are sort of committed and aligned to this programme. And one of the reasons for doing that is so that they're equipped to have the right conversations with people. We know that in some circumstances we might get some pushback from members of the public, particularly if it feels that something's been taken away from them. But it's not about taking services away from people. It might be about offering something different, though, to meet the same need. So I think as part of our wider comms plan, we will be thinking about, what are the messages we need to give to the public, and how do we drip feed some of those messages in a meaningful way as part of our communication and branding. Yvonne?
Yeah, I think, one of the things that just as you were talking, I mean, the thing that really strikes me is that we often give people a lot more than they ask for. So, people come to us and they ask for something, and we give them 3 times what they've asked for. So, I've had experiences in my time where people have come and said, my mum needs some help getting up out of bed in the morning and getting dressed. And the next thing you know, she's got 4 calls a day. And so this is about turning those conversations on the head. And I think probably the biggest question is, how are we going to manage the issues around risk? because one of the reasons we do that is because once people are known to us, we inherently see risks in what happens. So we go in, and by putting in that call to help mum get up and get dressed, and then walking away from that without any support for the rest of the day, there is an inherent anxiety that if something happens in the rest of that day, that it'll be us that'll be criticised for that, because we haven't gone far enough and we haven't seen risks that. So I think, you know, in addition to that strengths-based thinking, we also need to be thinking about risk and what does that mean. And I think some of the big communication messages aren't necessarily around what we will and what we won't provide. It's about why we provide the things the way we do, and being really cognizant that actually we can't head off every single thing that could happen to somebody. And it's about proportionate risk taking, and it's about positive risk taking. And I think that's another big cultural shift that we need to make. And that is a big thing that we have to push out into the community. And I think, you know, when you look at what's happened with COVID-19 and people staying at home, staying isolated, not going into care, families sort of not wanting to risk that family member being in an environment where they may contract an illness that could be fatal to them, that has shifted the mindset of the public around risk and frailty, and older people, particularly older people, because that's where a lot of our demand is. And I think one of the things that we have to do is have some really confident conversations about risk and what is our role in that, because we're not there to mop up everything, and we are not there to mitigate against every single risk. Families have to take some of that responsibility too. And if people are asking for something, then it's our responsibility to make sure that it's something they need and that we provide it in the most effective way. It's not our job to go way above and beyond that in the hope that we've put belt and braces on it as well. And sometimes we will have to, because sometimes something will be patently obvious that we need to. But that, again, is a different mindset, and it's a different way of thinking about how we apply some of these strengths-based approaches.
Thanks, Lee and Yvonne, that's really helpful. I'm just going to go down to another anonymous message from the live session. There's a thumbs up on this one as well, so someone else likes this question. Will community support services, or will the community support service be doing reablement in the future? Currently, the discharge to access, currently it's with no reablement, and it was before the change to discharge to access. Yeah.
So that's
me. Thanks, Yvonne.
Yeah. So, I mean, in terms of the community, our in-house community services, the discharge to assess is clearly an imperative for us. It is going into winter. That isn't going to change. I think the whole issue around reablement is one that we have not yet fixed. It's not. It's a wicked issue. So the biggest sort of part of that short-term offer is actually starting to build a picture that answers that question. So is it appropriate for it to be part of our in-house offer, or is it something that we work with the independent sector to try and develop? And I don't honestly know the answer to that. Community services have been all things to all people, and our in-house services continue to be that. And it's always going to be, I suspect, an element of that. There is an expectation where the market can't meet the requirements that our in-house services will step in and try and do that. So we talk very much about services of last resort. Certainly in the foreseeable future, I see the direction of travel being around discharge to assess, because I think we've made some significant impact in terms of being able to do that, and the discharge to assess model requires a really sustainable and robust approach, and I think we offer that from an in-house perspective. We haven't yet trialled that with the independent sector, and I'm not sure that winter's the right time to do that. So I'm afraid it's probably still a big question mark in there. My ambition would be that our discharge to assess model includes reablement, so that there is some reablement that sits alongside that. But that will require us to build some capacity, because it's a if you work in that service, it's a small service, and that you're stretched to deliver everything that you need to deliver. And again, that'll be another discussion, and another question do we have to grow our in-house services, and if we do, how will we do that? because again, recruitment's a real challenge, and particularly into a service where we require everybody to drive. So lots of work to be done, and I think probably we're 6 to 12 months away from having all of those answers, or even a good proportion of them. But I think through winter the focus will be D to assess, discharge to assess, and not reablement. And Lee's nodding his head, so I think he's probably in agreement with me.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a cracking question, and there are some, I call them strategic conundrums, and there's a few in that question and Yvonne's response, but we're close to working them out, because I said earlier that we've got a detailed slide deck coming to us next week around that short-term offer and what it needs to look like, and some of that design in terms of how we commission it, where it sits, what it needs, are the key parts of that discussion. So we're going to be starting those detailed discussions in the coming weeks.
Can I come back in?
Yeah.
I think one of the things that we haven't talked about on this call is the technology offer, and we've just rolled out the medication module of iCare in residential care. Well, in Old School House, we're just about to roll it out into the other residential services, and that has been absolutely revolutionary. It's saved huge amounts of time for seniors. It's improved safety to the point of it's nearly impossible to make a mistake. I've said that, and then that'll happen. So I'm touching wood, but that technology and that app has delivered a real benefit to that service, and we're exploring with some gusto some kind of medication module for community services, because we know that's a big risk in that area for everybody, not just our in-house services but also for our external provider market. And I think if we can maximise the use of technology, that will free up capacity in terms of being able to do more. So that reablement offer being able to be built in with the resources that we've got. But I'm just conscious how much time people spend around medication and trying to make sure that medication errors don't happen, and it's very time consuming for all of the sector, and fraught with risk. So there are things that we're exploring around technology which will help us build capacity and will help us get to the answer to that question that you've just asked. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Lee and Yvonne, that's great. We've only got a few more minutes left of the session, so I'll try and ask these. There's a few questions left, so I'm sorry we're not going to get through all of them, and then we'll just do a really quick roundup from Lee and Yvonne after that. So the next question is anonymous from the live session. Whilst we fully support the testing and piloting attached to Your Life, Your Way, we are concerned about how we maintain day-to-day business due to great recruitment difficulties. What are your thoughts on recruitment going forward? Yvonne, thank you.
Well, we did the recruitment campaign during COVID-19, and one of the things that we had in train before the Your Life, Your Way programme started was an IBCF project around recruitment and around marketing, and that's taken some time to put together because it's an extensive and really big programme, but that's about to come to fruition. So using what we've learned through COVID-19, we've tapped into the National Workforce Development marketing campaign, and we're just about to go live with a portal and a web platform for providers to be able to advertise their vacancies on that portal, and for people to log onto that portal and put their own profiles on, a bit like Indeed. And that will cover not just provider services, but that will cover a whole range of professions around health and social care in East Riding. And we are really quite optimistic that that will reap us some rewards. We certainly saw some increased activity around recruitment when we ran the campaign through the COVID period. So I think that's the workforce issues are huge and wicked, but we have got this campaign lined up, and hopefully that will start to deliver some big benefits for us.
Thank you, and I'll have to just do this last one and then a roundup from yourself and Lee. The change is exciting. Sorry, this is from Iona Sapcourt. The change is exciting, and the fact of looking at early engagement to support to prevent long-term reliance on the council. I'm wondering about the engagement with young people and children to support those developing independence at a younger age, especially while in a learning environment.
Wow. I think
Thanks,
that is an excellent comment and an excellent insight from Iona. So thank you for that. And I think, you know, it's a great opportunity. We have got the best relationship that we've ever had with children and young people services within adult social care. Some great partnership working happening. We've just scoped out a piece of work that we need to do around transitions and preparing for adulthood. So those are the opportunities within those discussions with professionals. But again, you know, there's lots of things that we could potentially do with young people, particularly young people in college. Around Yvonne's, you know, response to recruitment, how do we attract people into this industry as well? But you're right, how do we promote self-care and independence across our communities without you know, people transitioning into adulthood and creating a dependency? So I think that's you know, it's a really good insight, and it's an example of your insights and expertise contributing to this programme, and we will make a note of that because I think we need to think about it wider in terms of our communication plan. Thank you, Iona.
Thanks for that, Lee. Right, I think we'll have to just do a really quick roundup now, Lee and Yvonne, because it's just gone 10:30. So Lee, do you want to go next, and then we'll go to Yvonne? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, you know, just thank you everyone for listening. Thank you for your questions. Some great questions for Yvonne and I to respond to then, and I'm sure there's lots more that, you know, we've said we'll make a commitment to responding to and ensure that they're available on the intranet. From my point of view, it's been a great way to start a new working week, but a great opportunity to share some of the insights with people. And I just hope that you know, the insights from this morning have inspired and motivated you. If you're perhaps still left with some questions and wondering about the future and how you fit in and what is the part that you might want to play and need to play, then please do get in touch with us separately through the Your Life, Your Way email inbox. And you know, we're happy to hear ideas, suggestions, and we're happy for the challenge to come through as well, because if we do get those questions that challenge us, then that means that we can really have the dialogue around those questions and do the right thing in terms of how we move forward. And I think, you know, a final word from me is, you know, this is an invitation this morning for you as individuals to bring your energy into this programme, because as we said in the slide deck, you know, this is a collective effort, so everybody has a part to play. So I hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll hand back to Yvonne for her closing remarks as well. Thank you very much, everyone.
I'm not sure I can add much more to that, Lee. You've probably said it all much better than I could. I suppose the message I would just want to give to people that are from BMC is we're going to have to find some maybe different ways of responding to the change programme, because a lot of this change programme is about how adult services work and that journey for people through adult services. But that will start to emerge as we start to move to those different practices and those strengths-based conversations. And you know, the commissioning work stream, which as Lee said runs throughout this whole programme, will start to inform what it is that we need to do as providers differently, and where we need to grow and what we need to do to be able to contribute and make sure that we've got the right things in place to be able to deliver on the programme. So that's the big ask of us. For me, it's about how we grow, not how we don't, and it's about how we change and grow. And I think that you know, that's something that's in our DNA in providers. It's what we do. We do it every day. We do it every week, and we respond and we change. And and this is no different. So I think that the thing that I would hold fast to is that this is a really structured programme with very clear lines of communication. So if you don't understand, if there's things that are happening that you think, where does that leave us, please ask the question, because we are trying to make sure that that's clear for everybody. But if it isn't clear for you, let us know. And thank you all for your time this morning. I'm very grateful for it.
And thank you, Emma and Kimberly, for getting us through without any technological itches. I think that's a relief for me and Yvonne, isn't it, Yvonne?
Yeah.
Yeah. Have a fantastic week, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.